So in a way, suffering in this world is good. I find your questions very intriguing, okay? And they're very deep questions, so that's good. It shows a very alert mind.
I had the honor of Dr. Sandeep Abrol. That
Thank you very much. I like being here. God bless you. I
that life in a deep water. For the helping it go give me
Hey, all right, thank you. That's a very sincere question. I feel that uh, my suffering in a way in my understanding, is a healing medicine. All right, because these are tests from God. We have a short prayer about tests and difficulties where Baha'u'llah writes, O thou whose tests are a healing medicine to such as are nigh unto thee. That means if you are close to God, if you are close to God, it does not mean you will not be tested. And if you will be tested, it will be a form of suffering, which will be eventually to your advantage, because God will never make you suffer beyond your capacity.
in the in you that helping it God give
Yes, there is proof in my own life, rather more so in the life of my parents, where my elder brother, had had a brain tumor, which caused him to have difficulty in walking and talking and limited his mental abilities. And a lot of my parents' life, and after they passed away, my life was around keeping him in a state of happiness and in a state of confidence. And that was, I mean, it's, you see, once you, okay, that would to some extent be called the benefit of suffering. However, I recently read a very interesting line which seems to fulfill the situation. It's a quotation from Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl writes, suffering, suffering ceases to be suffering in the same way, in some way, at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. You see, the reason I thought we would take up this topic was that yes, if you look at suffering as a suffering, but if you look at suffering as an opportunity to become better, to become more socially conscious, to become more involved with your environment, to become more caring, to be more, to be more pleasant with society, to be more friendly. It changes your attitude. It makes you more humble. It also makes you more acceptable to other people's difficulties and their sufferings. So that is why I feel suffering is a gift. Everything is not hunky-dory in the world. All right? There are difficulties. We all face difficulties. And sometimes when we see people with greater difficulties than ourselves, we are relieved. And even the suffering itself makes us into a better person.
God to if a living was my all people is a real something.
It is, in my understanding, it is an expression of his love. God would never hate us. He would never hate us. He's a loving God. So if he wants to bring us closer to him, he will give us some tests, some trials, some suffering, so that we become more conscious of him and that we may get closer to him. I have read somewhere that when God wants to punish somebody, he makes them rich so that they turn away from him. They get involved in material actions. And that takes activities and that takes them away from the path of God, because God doesn't feel that these people are worthy. But those he tests, he wants them to come closer. That is why they also say that the good die young.
How is you bring in energy from war and how much different I am with or in our better be
Okay, how can something be a gift to God and how much is concerned? Okay, that's a two-part question, all right? Number one, if you believe in God, you will be tested, because that is the way how he makes you a better person. That is the way by which he is expressing his love for you. Because if he was not concerned with you, he wouldn't bother to test you. Okay? And overall, at the end of the day, it benefits you in bringing you closer to God. And we must always bear in mind that God would never hurt you. And the other element in that is the fact that God would never make you suffer beyond your capacity. And if at times you feel that he is, you're suffering beyond your capacity, then the only way to enhance your capacity is again turning towards God and asking for his assistance, for his help. Like as Baha'is, we have the tablet of Ahmed, we have the fire tablet, we also have other special prayers for protection and assistance. And by reciting those, they give us a lot of relief. There is one which is Ya Ilahil Mustaghaus. That's in Arabic, Ya Ilahil Mustaghaus. And it is said that it was repeated about 500 times, and that the repetition of a prayer reinforces our concentration. There is no direction as to number of times of repetition. But if you repeat a prayer frequently, your mind gets turned, your attitude turns towards God, and by that means you are able to come to terms with your suffering. And I think we had mentioned a few minutes back, earlier on the quotation, that when you come to terms with the reason for suffering, it is no longer a suffering. It is very much like a sacrifice, that you sacrifice yourself for the loved one. Okay? There's also a very short prayer that goes, he who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. So in a way, if the suffering induces in you a fear of God, that will bring you closer to him. If you like, I can tell you a short story.
Yeah.
You know, there was a bus accident and the bus flew over the cliff, and all of them, unfortunately, met with a terminal end. So when they landed up at St. Peter's Gate, there were a lot of people standing in the line, and when the bus driver came to the door, they were all there. When the bus driver came to the entrance, he was let in immediately, whereas all the other people in the bus had to hold on for a while. They said, "What is so special about this man?" He said, "Well, when he drove the bus over the cliff, he made all of you remember God. So that is why he has special permission to enter heaven, because he was able to make all of you remember God when he was taking the bus over the cliff."
It is believe that something is going the value of many of us is life to everybody and the comfort in life.
Okay, right. You see, the point is, in my understanding, poverty is not a virtue. Poverty is when you don't struggle. God has given you all the facilities by which you can earn a livelihood. In one of the hidden words, which is one of part of Baha'u'llah's revelation, he says, "The best of men are they that earn a livelihood by their calling and spend upon themselves and upon their kindred for the love of God and the Lord of all the worlds." The process of earning a livelihood is, in a way, a sort of suffering, but it is enjoined upon all human beings. And that is the way to attract the beneficence of God. But the point is, at some time in our lives, we have to ask ourselves two questions. One is, who am I? And when is enough enough? Okay, so that is when we have to decide. Okay, another interesting concept which I understand from the Sikh religion, all right, they have a 3-step or a 3-word principle in life, which means, there are 3 words. There is karam, chag, the wonder. Okay, karam, you understand, means work. It is good to work, it is honorable to work. Chag means to eat, that you must fulfill the requirements of your family. You must fulfill your requirements. And the third part is wonder. One means distribute to those people who are not as fortunate as you. Now, the middle question about chag, which is eating or looking after your family, that is where we have to ask ourselves, when is enough enough? Okay? If we do not let our ego take control, and we don't need to try and be better than everybody else or somebody else, or we try and keep up with our neighbors, right? That creates an element of animosity, of envy and jealousy, and also a sense of discontent. And I think the main purpose of having the right attitude is to be content. And in addition to being content, you must also make use of the opportunities you have to benefit others. Because today, man is not an individual, we are in a community, we are in a society. So, the individual transformation, turning towards God, is very important, and also changing society is important, which means social transformation is equally important. And when you get involved with that element of work, nothing is suffering. Because whatever you suffering and sacrifice become similar, because when I sacrifice, it gives me a sense of joy. Similarly, when I suffer, if my attitude is correct, that too gives me joy. Never would I consider suffering as a punishment. And there's also a beautiful saying we have in English that every cloud has a silver lining. So it depends what your attitude is. Can you see the silver lining or do you see the cloud? Is your glass half full with water or half empty? That is your attitude. And the correct attitude comes from developing a relationship with God.
There are various types of suffering. In your opinion, the type of suffering would be a gift from God, and this would be the love of religion.
Okay, now there are a number of types of suffering. Okay, they can be of a material nature or of a spiritual nature. They can be pain and they can be suffering related to pain and discomfort. But okay, if you look at the problem with the right attitude, then there is no negative form of suffering. If you respect the fact that you are suffering so that you will become better. And as Baha'is, we know that we are not scared of death. Okay? We don't have a negative approach towards death. And in a way, even in death, which is considered the ultimate sacrifice or the ultimate suffering, that too is actually the liberation of the soul. That takes us further and closer to God. Now, the point is that material suffering can cause us some level of discomfort and our attitude can change it. But when you come into spiritual suffering, now that in a way is when we do things which are against the will of God. Spiritual suffering, all right? When you feel guilty, what in Christianity involved the process of confessing to the local priest, and you would be absolved of your problems. Now, when you have spiritual suffering, then that causes you a lot of unrest. It causes you a lot of discomfort. And the point there is that there are two elements in that. Either you should correct that, because we have a quotation that says, bring yourself to account each day. well nigh the day of reckoning. Because whatever punishment you are due, whatever reprimanding is supposed to happen to you, if it happens in this world, it is much lesser than if you had to be reprimanded in the world afterwards or the next world. So, in a way, suffering in this world is good. The point is that human nature, it is the human nature to error. To error is human. Okay? But it is saintly to correct your error. And if you correct your error while you are in this world, that is much better than trying to correct it in the next world or in the next worlds of God. So whatever suffering or whatever discomfort you receive now, okay, you can work around it in this life rather than in the subsequent lives. Well, yeah, that's the real life, isn't it? Yeah.
If you help me, a God means you help me for the past. It means that he like heaven. And it means that he like heaven. Me would you and God.
Okay, all right, all right. Okay, now, so the choice is between heaven and hell.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I think the first choice would have to be hell, because if I chose heaven, I would be being arrogant. That would be an ego trip. All right. Whereas in God's presence, one is always humble. And He wishes me to have hell, I would take it in the same element. If He blesses me with heaven, that too is the same. In my understanding, there's no difference between the two because it is His wish. All right. Again, I need to refer to another beautiful prayer. Let me see if I can track it down. Give me a moment. Okay. See, we have the concept he who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. Okay. Now, another element is that there's another prayer in which he talks about, this one. That when I repair for refuge, O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, and towards all thy signs I set my heart. All right. Then he goes on to say, I place my whole trust in thee. If I have trust in him, that heaven and hell are no different because I trust him. It's an expression of my servitude. And then with that trust comes, we ask God to make us independent of all things. And we request God, it goes, bestow upon me my portion, O Lord, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. If it is suffering, that is fine. If it is hell, it is good. If it's not hell, it is heaven, that's fine, good. Because whatever thou hast ordained for me is what I want. Plus, the last line, it's a prayer from the Bab. Thine is the absolute authority to command. So, who am I to choose? His will? Yes, sir. Okay. So, for me, there is no choice.
Me, I would like to hear your on the I am Captain.
I think it's very nice. It's very convenient. I can comprehend what you're saying quite clearly, and I can, once I understand what you're asking, and the questions are very much in depth, I have to be. I'm able to. Since I'm able to understand them, I can then respond to them also. And despite the fact that there was once or two occasions when the question had to be repeated, or it still made very much sense, and it was a very sensible question. And I appreciate the fact that the amount of effort that went into putting both the software together and the questions together. So God bless you. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you. And I'm quite happy to have helped you out. And in case you need my further, I find your questions very intriguing. Okay. And they're very deep questions. So that's good. It shows a very alert mind. And despite the difficulty in conversation, you've come across very well understood. Okay. God bless.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Your time and wisdom are greatly appreciated.
That's very sweet of you to say all that. But you must understand, I also appreciate the opportunity to be able to come, to able to talk with you in a very easily comprehensible way. All right. So God bless. All right. Thank you.
Goodbye, and for now, and more for more on work.
Sounds like a good idea. No reason why not. Okay. Best of luck on Anand's world. Take care.